kommer ha den här. Jag kommer stå så här. Bra. Bra. Kan jag börja? Good morning, everyone. Nice to see all of you in this room. My name is Samantha Cord. I'm a Swedish journalist and television producer. I'll be moderating today's event. First of all, much welcome. This is a live-streamed event and a conference, and I wish both participants and speakers welcome to the European Antibiotic Awareness Day event, held in Stockholm for the second time this morning. So we're here today to discuss the current situation regarding antibiotic resistance, a situation some experts has compared to that of climate change. And today we'll be discussing the actions taken to address them by all stakeholders, both by EU, EEA and national levels. And the event is, of course, organized by the ECDC and hosted by the European Commission representation here in Sweden. So today is comprised into 4 parts. You'll hear from our keynote speakers who will speak on antimicrobial resistance, a major European global challenge. And where you, the audience, you will be given the opportunity to address your questions to the speakers. And this is followed by a press briefing for invited press only. And then we'll be taking a break for 1.5 hours, and there will be a light luncheon served outside in the hallway. After the break, we'll start our second part of this event, which consists of 2 panels. The first one focuses on the One Health Action Plan. And this is followed by an in-depth conversation and analysis about the first of its kind, which I know all of you have been waiting for, the survey of healthcare workers' knowledge, attitudes, and behaviors about antibiotics, antibiotic use, and antibiotic resistance. And now I need to take a sip of water, if you don't mind. So, we'd like to remind you, of course, that the event today is filmed. So by participating, you're also giving your consent for the ECDC to record you. But if you have any questions, you can always contact us. They'll be sitting there over there at that table if you have a problem with that. And I want to start off by saying, when I was asked to moderate this event, my own personal experiences came to mind. My son Samuel, he was born with a congenital disorder called congenital amputation. And in his case, it caused his left leg not to form normally, and his left foot significantly smaller. And from the day he was born, we were told that he had to go through extensive surgery in order to be able to walk. So this is what we did. And almost to the day, today, 8 years ago, he underwent his first surgery. And this is a quite complicated operation in an effort to lengthen his leg. And the short version of this is that there's an external fixator that was around his leg, and it's held in place by pins that came through the skin and into the bone, and these pins are meant to keep the bone in place when new bone forms. An incision is made through the skin so the bone can be cut, and this is where the new bone growth will happen. And the surgery went very well. But after about 2 months into his healing process, he fell very ill, and an infection sent him to intensive care with sepsis, fighting for his life. Before testing him for 100 different infections, me and my husband, we heard doctors talking about antibiotic-resistant bacteria. We were, of course, terrified and frightened. And eventually, he was treated with a powerful combination of antibiotics. His blood was cleansed of toxins, and an infection-fighting capacity was boosted with plasma exchange. And 2 weeks later, he was transferred from the pediatric intensive care unit onto another unit. Those 2 weeks were the most terrifying weeks of my life. And it terrifies me to imagine what would have happened had not the antibiotic treatment worked. So we all know that sepsis is a life-threatening condition and that before the introduction of antibiotics was almost always fatal. And it can still be fatal. And if we won't figure out measures on how to stop the growing threat of antibiotic resistance, these types of surgery and others much less invasive will be off the table. So that's my story on antibiotic resistance. So moving forward to our first speaker, hosting today's event is the European Commission's representation in Sweden. Please welcome Head of the European Commission's representation in Sweden, Katarina Areskog Mascarenhas.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. It's fantastic to see so many here in the audience. I think that reflects the importance of today's subject. My name is Katarina Areskog Mascarenhas. I'm head of the EU Commission's representation here in Sweden. And what we do, we are the bridge between Brussels and Sweden, you could say. We explain the EU in Sweden, and we explain what's going on in the EU, what's going on in Sweden, also in Brussels, so the bridge between. We are extremely honored to co-host with ECDC today's event, a very important event on the European Antibiotics Awareness Day. And this is actually, today marks the day of a number of national campaigns all over Europe on this important subject. A big thank you to Andrea Amon and the ECDC. We have had excellent cooperation to organize this event, and a very warm welcome to our commissioner here, Vytenis Andriukaitis, who is our commissioner for food safety and health. And I remember it was not so long time ago you were here in March, and we had in this very room a very vivid citizens dialogue where the commissioner explained very well the EU health policy in front of a large audience. And we're very much looking forward to listen to you this morning as well. As you might know, we are about to change the commission. It looks like we will have a new commission on the 1st of December, and we will miss our commissioner very much, but we are extremely grateful because there has been very important work done in this field, and we are all grateful for this. So you might wonder what will happen on the 1st of December. What will the new Commission do in this field? And there is a challenge. As you know, Europe has one of the world's most affordable and high-quality health systems. But at the same time, we are getting older, and we've actually also with this very positive development also incurring more health problems. So for the Commission, it will be very important to support the health sector and the professionals working in this sector to invest in new technologies, increase inefficiency, and also make sure that we have healthy lifestyles so that we will not need so much of this innovation and medicines. So the new president of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, she has given the commissioner designate, Stella Kyriakides, a couple of tasks which can be interesting to note to see what's going to go on the next 5 years. So she has said it's very important to ensure that Europe has a supply of affordable medicines to meet its needs, and that emphasizes the need for continuous innovation. There's also a new regulatory framework on medical devices, and this will be for her to implement. She's also been given the task to make the most of e-health and to create a European health data space, and put forward Europe's Beating Cancer plan to support member states to improve cancer prevention and care. And maybe the most important issue for this audience is that she gave Mrs. Kyriakides the responsibility to ensure the full implementation of the European One Health Action Plan against antimicrobial resistance. And when Mrs. Kyriakides held her hearing in the Parliament, she also gave a couple of details on what she was going to do. She emphasized actually the work of the ECDC and other agencies as well, European Medicines Agency and the European Food Safety Authority. And she emphasized the importance that public authorities and industry work together on innovation on new antibiotics, and also to work on a global agreement on the use of and access to antimicrobials. In this context, it might also be interesting to note that there's a discussion going on the next EU budget right now from 21 to 27. And we as Swedes, we look often very much and scrutinize the costs of this next budget. But it can be interesting to also note that there are a lot of things we also get as an output from this budget. And one of them is, of course, there's increased money to Horizon Europe, the old Horizon 2020. And in this budget, there will be joint research projects on citizens' health and on, in particular, on how to improve cancer prevention and care. So with these words, I thank you very much for the attention, and I wish everybody an interesting, interactive, and enlightening conference. And I'll give the word to Andrea.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So please go ahead, Andrea Ammon from ECDC.
Yeah, very good morning also from my side. I'm Andrea Ammon. I'm the director of the ECDC, co-hosting this event. And I would like to welcome you for the 2019 edition of this European Antibiotic Awareness Day. So it's for the 11th time that we hold this. And it is an initiative that started very small in 2008 and has grown over the years. It is now, for this year, we anticipate that more than 40 countries will actually at the same today have events also on this topic. And that is a huge success. This event should be a platform for uniting all the stakeholders and also for supporting them in implementing all the guidelines. We have, since 2015, also organized EAAD jointly with WHO's World Antibiotics Awareness Week. So, and we will continue to do so. Raising awareness is a crucial step, but it's only the first step. What we have to do is put all the guidelines and policies in practice. And this is what we're talking about today. Everybody is responsible in this. It's not only the doctors and the nurses, it's also the pharmacists, the veterinarians, the farmers, the policymakers, and also we as patients or potential patients. And this event has brought together a lot of our stakeholders, either here in the room or online. And I would really like to thank all of you for your continuous commitment. And in this regard, I would also like to thank the Commissioner, not because he's here only today, but he has been so every single year in his term. And I think this is an outstanding commitment to make the importance of antibiotic resistance very clear. Now, as every year, we present to you the data of our antimicrobial resistance, the latest numbers from last year, and about the antibiotic consumption in Europe. But this year, we have also something special for you, and that are the results of a survey of healthcare workers' knowledge and attitudes about antibiotics and antibiotic resistance in the EU. And this is the first such survey in the EU that is multi-country and multi-professional. So we will have a good evidence base what the healthcare professionals know and what they don't know. And understanding what is driving their daily work in terms of knowledge, attitudes, and behavior is very important in order to know where to target measures in terms of communication or education. And that is now for the single countries to decide based on the survey. And we will also use this survey for the future antibiotic awareness days to see whether we can target our themes. So very welcome, and I hope and wish us all very good discussions and an interesting day. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So, as of March 2016, our next speaker was appointed to the High-Level Commission on Health, Employment and Economic Growth by the UN Secretary Ban Ki-moon. He served both as head of the Lithuanian delegation to the Convention on the Future of Europe, as well as Minister of Health to the Lithuanian government before being appointed European Commissioner. His background within medicine as a prominent doctor in his home country has instilled a great responsibility to stand in the forefront against antibiotic resistance. And we're so honored to welcome the European Commissioner for Health and Food Safety, Vytenis Andriukaitis. Thank you.
Thank you so much, especially for your brilliant personal case presented to all of us. You know, for me, I close my eyes and I see in my practice a lot of patients. A lot of patients. And of course, now I think if we all can close eyes and to speak about such terrible issue on behalf of 700,000 people who died this year, or 33,000 people who died this year in European Union, can you imagine how many tragedies around? Tragedies, really. And of course, how it's difficult to treat people when you have such those cases and complications, sepsis and so on. That is about what we are just speaking, you know. I remember my days when I was schoolboy. I read brilliant book. It's called, I don't remember the author of the book, but the book called Hunters of Microbes. It's about 19th century. Those about Robert Koch and others, you know. It was so inspiring. And now I see in this room a lot of hunters of superbugs. And thank you in the morning to be together with us and see from Finland, real hunter here. And I am very happy that we need to do our best. Okay, you know, it's my last speech, last event, and you know, it's for me, you know, and just I look back when you just spoke about a little bit about those 5 years. Thank you, Andrea. You know, we did our best. Of course, when we see those results and this personal case, it means that we do something not enough. Do you agree? Do you agree, colleagues? Because surveys show that we are doing not something enough. It's morning today, you know, we need to have energy to address those issues. Okay, second is important case. Thank you. You now are leading figure in our European Awareness, Antibiotic Awareness Day. It means Stockholm is capital now of European Awareness, Antibiotic Awareness Day, and you are championing. We are helping you to do your best, but we know very well that we have today start of WHO, World Antibiotic Awareness Day, Awareness Week. Do you think you can see on CNN and on BBC, on Facebook titles and you know, messages? No messages. Oh, it will be good to see headline. Oh, attention, please. This year we lost 700,000 deaths. Can we ask CNN or BBC or Euronews to send messages? When we're speaking about Awareness Day, we need to understand our partners, where we are all together. And for me, it was very painful because when I came into office, I have weak understanding about, but I have idea, okay, Euronews, We can encourage Euronews to send messages because awareness days are very important to have awareness days in everywhere. You know, it's time to time. Diabetic awareness day, antimicrobial resistance awareness day, and so on. Euronews just shows us cases in different continents, but nothing with problems which are so important. Why? From my point of view, because we are facing phenomenon of invisibility. People do not see nothing, they do not understand. They have their own thoughts. Invisible hand of resistant bacteria now is showing terrible situation. It's the same when we're speaking about vaccination. People do not see viruses. They have millions of ideas of misunderstanding, you know, fake news, and they are trying to behave in invisibilities. Big challenge. And now it will time to ask European leaders. The situation is completely different. Climate change, globalization, and they need to help us to keep high on the agenda public health threats. Because people do not understand it. So we can't blame those people. Sorry for my introduction, a little bit emotionally, because I am, you know, Okay, in this context in which people are still not sufficiently aware of the danger of IMR, and unfortunately important knowledge gap also exists in healthcare workers, as shown by this today's ECDC's survey. I read a little bit, you know, you can present it, but I know that it shows that we have problems within our family, within family of healthcare workers. Since the beginning of my mandate, you know, I tried to do my best. I don't know how it was, but this year event is an ideal occasion to look retrospectively at these last years and look forward to identify what else we can do or what we can do better together to stop the spread of IMR. Look, first slide. Please allow me to say eligible. Since the adoption of a global action plan by the World Health Organization members 4 years ago, ambitious council conclusions were adopted under the Dutch presidency in 2016, followed by the Commission's adoption in 2017 of a comprehensive action plan pursuing the One Health approach. It was before, and now we have second action plan. In fact, this action plan outlines over 70 concrete actions, 70. These steps contributed to recognize that human health, animal health, and environment are interconnected while reinforcing the research and global agenda. Last year, the European Parliament adopted a resolution calling to strengthen actions against AMR. Finally, this year, a new set of Council conclusions were adopted under the Romanian presidency, containing a broad agenda on which the Commission and Member States should now work together. All of these commitments and political decisions have led to concrete outcomes. Let me give you some examples. A new European Union legislation on veterinary medicines and medicated feed was adopted in December 2018. It will apply as of January 2022. This legislation lays down a vast array of concrete measures to fight IMR following the One Health approach. Some of these measures include a ban on the preventive use of antibiotics in groups of animals. And survey shows that not big number of people knows about. The possibility to reserve certain antimicrobials for human use only. Third, a reinforced ban on the use of antimicrobials in animals for promoting growth, in addition to the prohibition of antibiotics as feed additives in 2006. Compulsory collection of data on sales and use of antimicrobials in animals. Really very powerful instruments, but of course it's in the area of agriculture, as you know. In 2017, EU guidelines for the prudent use of antimicrobials in human medicine were developed similarly to those adopted for veterinary medicines in 2015. We have launched a 2 million euros call for grant to engage health professionals in their implementation. Implementing legislation on case definitions for IMR to support European Union-wide epidemiological surveillance was adopted in June 2018. With our three agencies, ECDC, EMA, and EFSA, we have provided member states with the best evidence-based analysis to help them build national policies on IMR. And I think it's first time when those three agencies are cooperating in very, very close field. I am glad that new scientific reports on the surveillance of IMR and on antimicrobial consumption have been released today. Healthcare workers have, like in the case of vaccination, a key role to play in the fight against IMR. I look forward to hearing more details about the results of the survey of health workers' knowledge and attitudes about antibiotics and antibiotic resistance in the EU, European economy area that ECDC is presenting today. Working in collaboration with member states and other stakeholders has been a major focus of the action plan. In that context, first, we have supported the implementation of national One Health action plans through joint Commission ECDC visits and missions to member states upon their request. Second, the joint action on IMR and healthcare-associated infections and the joint action on vaccination are also important examples of collective action. Third, we provide regularly progress report on implementation of the EU IMR action plan online, and we will continue reporting on the progress. I would like to note that majority of the EU member states have adopted comprehensive national action plans covering human health, animal health, and environment. I am using this opportunity once again to call on those member states that have not yet developed a comprehensive national plan action, and I ask them to do so and to do, keeping in mind all three pillars: health, agriculture, and environment. The European Commission is ready to support the development of member states' action plans. This can take the form of joint visits to member states by the European Commission and ECDC to provide advice. As you know, several visits have already taken place. And under the Better Training for Safer Food initiative, extensive training programs have been developed both for member states and third countries. In March 2019, the Commission adopted a EU strategic approach to pharmaceutical in the environment. It is an important milestone to understand better the role played by the environment in the development and spread of IMR. It proposes 6 areas of actions. First, to increase awareness and to promote prudent use of pharmaceuticals. Second, to support the development of pharmaceuticals intrinsically less harmful for the environment and promote greener manufacture. Third, to improve environmental risk assessment and its review. Fourth, to reduce wastage and improve the management of waste. These waste problems are very big ones. Fifth, to expand environmental monitoring, and sixth, to fill other knowledge gaps. Allow me to focus now on the research, which has been a key pillar underpinning our fight against IMR. We already invested over 1.3 billion euros under the EU research programs, with another 400 million to come before the end of 2020. In July 2019, the Commission published Horizon 2020 research calls in the area of health, demographic change, and well-being. It's very important to speak about well-being. Finland, as presidency country, put well-being high on the agenda. This provides funding for IMR research to identify and test better ways for the clinical management of patients in areas with high levels of IMR. It will also support the establishment of a Europe-wide clinical study network for infectious diseases. And we need to keep in mind such important possibility. It could speed up the development of new treatments and diagnostics and thereby reduce development costs. As part of the international pillar of the EU Action Plan, the EU Partnership Cooperation Instrument for cooperation with third countries is successfully applied in the IMR field with ongoing activities in Latin America countries. We organize meetings in Argentina, in Brazil. We have discussions with Chile, Colombia, Paraguay, and so on. And similar activities are currently being developed for Asian countries. And of course, we have debates with African countries also. Last but not least, the fight against IMR has gained prominence at global level. This is particularly true for the G7 and G20, where leaders have called for One Health approach and acknowledged the need for more multi-sectorial actions. I am happy that such fora had in the recent years ministerial meetings dedicated to health. At G7, G20 levels, where in all meetings we discussed issues about IMR. But we need to know that global leaders, they have obligation not only sign agreements, memorandums, and to deliver speeches prepared by their advisors. They should be real leaders to understand what they are signing. And to do at home more, we need to ask our global leaders to understand. Because when we look at the situation on the ground, then you can see gap between high-level conferences and very low level of ground and low activities on the ground. That is a challenge today. And we will continue our engagement in all relevant international organizations, WHO, OIE, FAO, Codex, and CNN, and with our partners in the framework of TATFA, Transatlantic Task Force on Antimicrobial Resistance. In our negotiation and internal trade agreements, like recently with the Mercosur agreement, provisions concerning cooperation were included on IMR. Please look at this slide. EU is, and European, this part of Europe is red. This slide shows how many planes, trains, cars, ships are going around the globe. Every minute, every hour, every day. Can you imagine situation in 19th century when our microbe hunters discovered a lot of microbes, and today, the hunters of superbugs have very difficult environment. There's complexity, multifactorial situation, a lot of actors, and when we are speaking about awareness, Antimicrobial Awareness Day, we need to understand how many actors should be involved in our campaigns, and that's a big problem. Indeed, in our increasingly interconnected world characterized by an intensive exchange of people and commodities, policies implemented in one region can have significant impacts everywhere. In such an important endeavor, there is, however, no room for complacency. We should not forget that IMR is a cause for death in the EU today, with nearly 100 people a day. Can you imagine this day, 100 people can die in 28 member states from resistant infections. This is, for me, it's terrible to see. We should also increase efforts to raise awareness about IMR and the prudent use of antimicrobials, because still too many people continue to take antibiotics for colds or flu, and still antibiotics are obtainable without prescription. This is unacceptable today. It means that we need to take it for, out of. We need to do it much more, much better. I hope that through this European Antibiotic Awareness Day, we can also hear back from some of you, the professionals in this field, about how we can reach out more and have concrete outcomes in rolling back IMR. Last week, the European Court of Auditors released its special report with a self-explanatory title, Addressing Antimicrobial Resistance. Point. Progress in the animal sector, but this health threat remains a challenge for the EU. I read this report. I agree with their proposals, conclusions. I see weaknesses, I see my weaknesses. Now I think if I will come back 5 years ago and will be more knowledge, will have in my hands more knowledge, I will be much more energetic. But sorry, time is running. I am pleased that the court acknowledged our efforts also, but we need to do more. I am convinced that IMR will remain very high on the political agenda of the next commission. To fight is far from being over. Indeed, Commissioner designate, as just you mentioned and you mentioned, he has been specifically asked in your mission letter to focus on full implementation of the Action Plan 2017 and work with our international partners to advocate for a global agreement on the use of and access to antimicrobial. We could even think about the international binding agreement to tackle this threat. We have excellent example, a framework convention on tobacco control. Let's do next step. Let's have in our hands framework convention on use of antibiotics. We need to have common methodology globally. We need to have something, instruments which can help us understand such, global picture. And we need always show globality of those problems. A lot of slides, a lot of concrete examples to change a little bit understanding. Because silo mentality and, and here is good example, thinking globally and acting locally. Now we can extend our capacities to understand global picture. And we need to have such agreement, no doubt. I am a big fan that we need to move in such area. Colleagues, like-minded friends, ladies and gentlemen. To conclude, I would like to remind each of us a figure that we must all keep in mind. IMR causes over 33 deaths every year in the EU. Unless we stop its spread, we all know that IMR could potentially cause 10 million of deaths worldwide by 2050. This is a frightening scenario. And when we are speaking about climate change, about Greta Thunberg, those figures show, please calculate climate change and situation. Today, African swine fever is here in European Union. We have a lot of infectious diseases around. What will happen in 2050 if we are not capable to address climate change? If we are not capable, if Paris Agreement will be out of only on high level of ministerial conferences? But what is on the ground? And I think we need to include IMR in our activities, speaking about global climate change, and ask young generation to also be active in this field. But we need to pass messages to youngers that they should understand it. And we will not only know we have been successful once we start seeing the numbers dropping. A previous indicator, ECDC is also publishing today the latest surveillance. This is what should inform our actions and further efforts. Inappropriate use of antibiotics is still a big challenge. I would like to call on you to be even more active in spreading the message about the appropriate use of antimicrobials during the European Antibiotic Awareness Day and WHO World Antibiotic Awareness Week, but also throughout the year. Every year, it will be good Christmas message to all of us. Let's do better every year, every day next year. I count on you. Our response must be based on the fact that IMR needs urgent actions across border, across globe, both sectorally and geographically. I wish you successful European Antibiotic Awareness Day today, successful discussions, and of course it is my last speech. Sorry being a little bit emotional, but okay, I will do my best when I go back home, because then I will join with a very powerful alliance, and then we will continue in such alliance to press you, because I will be a member of European pensioners, and then we will see what can we do together. Thank you.
both inspiring and insightful presentation, and you painted a very, very good picture of what we have ahead. And it's also a grim picture, I see. There's a lot of challenges. What would you say, and I know you mentioned a few of them, but what would you say is the greatest challenge ahead?
I think the challenge, from my point of view, the low level of understanding of problem. Mine is a little bit simple. Education, education, and once again education. Now it is very important. Otherwise, we can lose that. I have a lot of my colleagues, healthcare professionals, yes, but look, we not all are capable to do our best. But what about society? Education. And we need to include into curricula of children, into school curricula. Now, different issues, because if you look at school curricula, they describe picture of 20th century. Now the situation is completely different. And we need to educate our students. And then, of course, education, awareness campaigns and programs to inform all operators, especially in agricultural area, because they are using a lot of antibiotics. Of course, and then with education. Maybe I am wrong, but
Thank you.
please tell me what can we do better.
Thank you, Commissioner. Please take a seat, and you will soon be joined by... keep seated there.
I
Please.
keep this.
Yes, thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
And you'll soon be joined by the other keynote speakers. We've heard the numbers. Many of you have mentioned it. 700,000 people around the world die due to antibiotic resistance every year. And without it, and we also heard the number, 33,000 people die in Europe every year due to infections with AMR. And without a global action plan, 24 million people will be pushed into extreme poverty. So these are very high numbers. And when you hear them, we can feel hopeless. What can I do? Because we all need to go on to a personal level and see this as, what can I contribute to? What can I do? Individual countries cannot succeed alone preventing this growing antibiotic resistance epidemic, but if we work together, we can hopefully reach a solution to this problem sooner rather than later. So joining us now, our first keynote speaker, please welcome Jana Husukaju, Permanent Secretary and Finnish Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry, also representing the presidency of the EU Council. Much welcome.
Thank you very much. Can I get the one to switch the slides? It's easier that way. So which one? I will find this one. Yeah. Okay. Dear Commissioner, I think it is an honor to be here. If this really is your last, big event, indeed. I couldn't agree more on what you said about everything starts from the awareness, as the director herself said as well, and then linked to understanding, and then the policy making, and then the implementation. And I see the gap that you referred to between the awareness, the decision making, and the reality. What I try to say with my few slides in here are quite pragmatic, practical examples from the Finnish side, trying to go a little bit more to the ground level, as you just said. But I want to start it by saying that if I wanted to go to one place to talk about antimicrobial resistance within the European Union or within the world, my choice would be Sweden, for sure. As those who you don't know, there's always competition between the neighbors. That's everywhere the same. And indeed, there's competition between Finland and Sweden on everything. But on antimicrobial resistance work, Sweden is leading. And And we are not so jealous about that, but we are proud of you. But we try to do our best, and we think you are the model for all the rest of the European Union as well. And my topic is about the presidency. Of course, as was mentioned by the moderator, I have my regards from the Ministry of Health and Agriculture and Environment. So I'm happy to talk a bit about about the One Health approach, as the Commissioner was referring to as well. So indeed, we need everyone to be involved in this discussion. So, a few words about the Finnish presidency program, a little bit only, but I want to emphasize that the 6 months is a very short period of time, and I'm very much appreciating the continuity of the work. So the Romanian presidency had the antimicrobial resistance conclusions in the summertime, which was very warmly welcomed, and then just a couple of weeks ago, we had the Economy of Wellbeing Council conclusions, where I think the main message clearly is that definitely the public health issues are a cornerstone of the well-being of any nation in the world, also within the European Union. Okay. So, how I want to cover the Finnish presidency on this one. It starts from the basic, as I already mentioned, that definitely public health is part of the big picture of security in any country, but also within the European Union. This is linked to the big threats of the world, and of course especially the climate change issue with all the worst effects it might have, and where, for instance, the migratory problems of people are closely linked. So it's for sure that the antimicrobial resistance and the public health issue is really part of the big picture of the security. So therefore, I think that how the Finnish presidency program was drafted is not a bad one. Of course, you may say that who is she to say after being one of those who drafted it. But indeed, it covers both the basic needs of a human being, from the basic thing of being secure of her and his own life, and then how well are we aware and how well are we prepared for the big challenges, but then going to the individuals, going to everyone as a person, starting from the well-being, and there I echo once again the Commissioner from basic needs for education, whether it's about antimicrobial resistance or health issues or whatever, education. And it can be, believe me or not, this can be also linked to sustainable growth, because we need money also, of course, for the well-being of any human being, but also against the fight of antimicrobial resistance. So indeed, the conclusions in the Council were very warmly welcomed, and specific topics on antimicrobial resistance, which I'm very, very proud of. And I'm coming up with my next slide a little bit more on detail with that. So, but it starts from the health security and, the sustainable health systems, but also the availability of the proper medication, including the good vaccine practices, indeed. And what I want to emphasize is that I have the privilege of being a member, and I'm sure that later today Saya will tell from the tripartite work point of view, that I have the privilege to be one of the members in the International Agency Coordination Group on Antimicrobial Resistance. And when we made the recommendations for the United Nations meeting for the whole globe, I think that you have to understand that when you are talking about antimicrobial resistance and the prudent use of antibiotics, at the same time in the scale you have to have the discussions of the availability of the proper medication. And that is sometimes, I think, both here in Sweden and Finland, a little bit difficult to understand when we are overwhelmed by everything. But globally, that is another issue. So it's still an issue, that not only to use the medication properly, but they have to be available for you to do. And we need after the awareness, we need political debate. We need discussions bilaterally, as I have tried to explain in here, and we definitely need the European level discussion. And again, once again, it will be happening on the 9th of December. Hopefully then with the new Commission leaders as well. And indeed, the availability of the medication needs to be taken on board. And as I emphasize the continuity of the discussion, and I want to thank you, Commissioner, very warmly. You explained with your slide the recent history, what Commission has really done in this arena. It's really worthwhile giving high applause under your leadership what has been done. Indeed, we need it to happen on EU level, but then we need to come to the country level. And the countries are, of course, responsible for the implementation of the national action plans. It's not only an issue that you have a wonderful pile of papers, nice ideas as you were referring. We can make speeches like I'm doing here, nice talks and promises, etc. But the implementation is about the concrete action. And there's an enormous amount of work even within the European Union on that one. Starting from the basic things, from hygiene, from vaccinations, from diagnostic issues, and of course, where you buy, where you get your medication. And whether they are based on proper diagnosis, as they should, also in the veterinary area for sure. And we need data, we need surveillance led by the European Union. We need to improve our data on every single member state, from human sector to veterinary and especially to the environment sector, where we lack the data a lot. And for that, we need, of course, research and innovation. And money for research, as you were referring, dear Commissioner, in your intervention. Now, only very quickly, a few examples that I was referring to from the field, from my own country. So this is not from the presidency, but selfishly from Finland. But as examples, what could be done for benchmarking, and I'm sure that all the member states have different things that we can learn new things. So one of the things that I'm very happy about, and I'm also happy to talk about it in Sweden, where animal welfare, as in Finland, plays an important role. But animal health, animal welfare, and the use of antimicrobials are all linked to each other. There's no doubt about that. It's about good farming practices, it's about hygienic things, and what I'm very pleased to say that in our Rural Development Fund, for many, many years, we have included the animal welfare, linked to the topics where we can give extra funds. So for farmers to do better, for the farmers to have free farrowing, which is a really hot topic everywhere in Europe at the moment, and for sure the castration of pigs is indeed another topic. But for all the animal species, you have possibilities to increase animal welfare, and with that you can even have an impact of the use of medication. And this has been taken very well, as you see the figures, the numbers in here explain how big portion of the husbandry is covered on a voluntary basis, of course voluntary, but you get financial compensation. So especially in the poultry and pork area, it's a very, very well taken issue today. And another one I want to emphasize is that we need guidelines. We need very pragmatic guidelines to animal owners what to do in practice. And this is an example that will also be available in English this month. It's about meat production. And again, it goes to very, very pragmatic issues, how to prevent animal diseases and how to take care of your animals, whether inside or outside. And the use of medication, including the pre-treatment with vaccines. So I hope and I wish this will be an issue that is available for any animal species, whatever production we're talking about, Europe-wide, and worldwide. And I know that, for instance, FAO has done a lot of work recently on this one. I'm aware that they have it for pork and for beef production, and I hope it will be also for poultry in due course. Another example is coming from the human side. The Finnish Institute of Occupational Health has given also advice and instructions to pork production workers. We are very much aware of the MRSA issue, and I think that for many years we have been talking about what is the threats to the people that are on a regular contact with the animals, with the risk, what to do, how to minimize the risk, etc. So it's not about the meat, the pork itself, but it's about the handling of the animals. And I think that is something that we need in the whole of European Union. And the latest one that I'm also very proud of, and I'm aware that in Sweden there's about the same existing. This will also be available in November. This is the new guideline for veterinary practices. It's not only about how to treat the animals that are sick, but it is about part of them being very, very basic things of hygienic issues, but to have a routine to decrease the risk on AMR. This was very well taken by the practitioners in Finland, and when we have in December the annual veterinary day, where the veterinarians are together, I'm sure that this will be one of the topics under discussion. And very, very pragmatic issue indeed, Commissioner. I hope that all the clinics for human health within EU have a similar one. I don't know what the situation today is. So, and then back to EU. We definitely need, as we had the long list of measures, the commitments. The same thing goes, of course, to the pharmaceuticals themselves. Whether it is about the access for the use of them, also about decreasing the risks for residues. All these very recent, I have to say, but very happy about that. And the last example that I have in here is going to the environmental sector. Everywhere we talk about circular economy now, which is a must. It is a thing we have to do, we have to implement that. It is not a new thing. I think that composting, etc., and using the manure from cattle and other animal species is something that we have been doing everywhere in Europe for decades or centuries, I would say. But of course, we have not been aware of the risks of residues. How will they remain in the land? Will they go to with the crops? Is it only linked to the soil itself, or do they migrate to the crops themselves? So indeed, research we need. We need research from a very, very pragmatic point of view, and I'm happy that this is one of the examples from Finland where we got some good results, of counting on that it's worthwhile to do the old fermenting thing, the old composting thing, but in a proper way, also to minimize the risks and to minimize the risks of water contamination, which is, of course, number one. But that is something we lack data. That is something that, if I had to say something where to put more money within the European Union, this would be one of those for sure. So, dear friends, with these words, you can guess, whether that's my own dog. Yes, that's my Rose or my Rose, Bruce, and I put on my Twitter, that everything starts by taking good care of ourselves with good, balanced food, enough training and energy loss, and the same thing is with our animals. Let's take good care of them, and then when we go to see a veterinarian or a doctor, let's challenge them as well. Do we need the antibiotics? I'm a veterinarian by training, and I know that in the bad old days, you were not a good veterinarian if you didn't give, some antibiotics. But now, the good veterinarian is who has the courage to say, antibiotics are not needed. But when you take them properly, and use the medication as the experts really say. Thank you very much. I'm happy to answer.
Love your dogs. Thank you. So, going back to the Finnish EU presidency, it's coming out in 2020. So the next rotating is Croatia. Have you had any indication that this topic is high on their agenda as well?
I'm not sure if AMR as such will be a topic by itself, but the continuity is for sure. Because, for instance, there could be some disappointment from the Finnish side even to say, why did the Romanian have the Council conclusions, why not Finland? But not every single presidency should have Council conclusions on antimicrobial resistance, because then the whole idea is diluted. And I think that what I'm sure from the Croatian point of view is as well that we need to take the concrete steps, and that is where we need the Commission to be involved. So from the research point of view, I'm sure that for the funding it is included. But for the measures, I would say it is a train that is moving despite whatever the
So it doesn't
presidency.
matter which country?
It definitely does not matter.
Okay. That's reassuring. We will come back to you later. Just reminding you, we'll be opening for a Q&A later on when you have a chance to address your questions to our speakers. Thank you very much again, Janne. So, Dr. Anders Tegnell is the state epidemiologist in Sweden and also the deputy director at the Public Health Agency. And their responsibility includes surveillance, data collection, analysis, and reporting of all aspects of the public health. Much welcome, Dr. Anders Tegnell.
Thank you very much. First of all, it's of course a great honor for me and my agency to be here with the Commissioner and all the distinguished guests in this public to talk about this very important subject. Even if it makes me a bit worried when our Finnish friends and colleagues say so good things about Sweden, there's a lot to live up to, I must say. But I'll try. Get my presentation okay, maybe? I will move a little bit further down in the complexity of this very complex problem. Of course, we all need these things on the global level, on EU level, on all different levels, but they need to come down on the local level where the real solutions and the real work needs to be done. And I'm going to talk about a little bit about a few things we've done in Sweden over the years. First of all, where are we? As several people have said already, for this complicated problem, it's very important to understand where we are. And this is only one aspect of it. And as you can see, even in Sweden, even if we are doing very well, the problem is increasing. But you can also see it's not so easy to say that it's only increasing, because in some areas it's not. And I think it's very important for us to continue to follow this and to understand what developments are we really going through. Because in some ways we are doing well in Sweden. We have actually managed to cut down consumption of antibiotics quite a lot over the years, especially among the young children. You see this red curve, which are among the high consumers among the elderly. We have cut down on this quite a lot. And I think it's quite a lot more common these days that the doctor meets patients who said, maybe we shouldn't have antibiotics. So this is becoming much better in Sweden. But even doing this, we can see that the curves are still going the wrong way. So we need to do a lot more in many different areas. Because, and this is a curve or a graph trying to show where are we heading and where are we heading when it comes to costs. Because this is, I think, one very important part. Of course, the suffering of patients, the dying of patients is not acceptable. But the real pressure we can put on many parts of our society is tell them how much is this going to cost us if we don't do anything. And even in Sweden, with a very favorable situation we have, we're talking a lot of money if we don't do anything. And maybe even if we do something. So it's very important that we keep on investing in this area and there is no room for complacency. This problem is never going to go away. We're going to have to keep on fighting it forever and ever, I'm sure. And so what are we doing in Sweden? We're doing a lot of different things, but I think what we really are doing quite well is that we get all different parts of society together in this. And we do it from the top level of the Ministry of Health down to the very local level. And this is just to show you all the different levels we have, where we try to collaborate at each different level, so that we really get a good effect out of our work. And one of the really important aspects, I think, that's been in Sweden for a long time, we were lucky. We had a lot of good people far back who started to work very early on, and I think that's part of our success. And what they did to a very great extent is they formed this collaboration at a very local level, getting the grassroots people to understand the problem, to work with the problem, and then really have an effect. And I think that's part of our success story when it comes to the use of antibiotics really comes up to really get everybody to understand, healthcare practitioners, but also patients, that we should use antibiotics in a responsible way, use them effectively. But we should also think about, we can go too far. We should not underuse antibiotics, because that's also dangerous, not least to the credibility of what we are doing. So we need to also be able to say all the time, we know that we are not using too little. And we are using a lot of different tools. This was the voluntary tool that I showed you last. And then we have the regulatory tools, so we need to use them too. Fairly early on, we managed to convince our government we also need to use the regulatory tool to really get our healthcare workers to understand how important it is with antibiotic resistance and how closely that is related to the hygiene in our hospitals. So the regulatory aspects, and that's really changed. In Sweden, we don't see any doctors with ties with things on them anymore. Everybody is using, including the doctors, which are always the most difficult ones to get to believe in anything. I'm a doctor myself, so I can say these kind of things. They are not easy to work with doctors. And that's been quite a success, because it's really changed also the hygiene procedures in hospitals, even if we still have a lot of problems. And as you very rightly said, there is a great need to work across sectors. And we have a great collaboration with the veterinary sectors. We publish a report yearly on the development in both sectors together, really to show everybody around us how important it is to work together and to understand where is the problem today, where do we need to push. And I think this is also a very important part of that. And of course, it's not only in the human and veterinary sector we need to work together. You mentioned the environmental sector, we have the pharmaceutical sector. There are many different sectors that need to work together. And that's why our government provided with a strategy. And in that strategy, there is a national coordinating mechanism, including 22 different governmental agencies, which is quite an achievement. I think this is probably the only area in Sweden where such a broad collaboration has been. And that's made it possible to work together very efficiently. And then lately, we have been discussing how do we access antibiotics in Sweden. Because there are new antibiotics coming there on the horizon. And we need to be able to take care of them really well when they come. So we need to find a model to do that. Because even in Sweden, and you mentioned, I think that's very important, we need to have access to antibiotics to do good work. And when, like in Sweden, you have low resistance rates, very restrictive use. Fastest on this one. And a small market. We are not all that interesting all the time to keep things on the market. And we can see some important antibiotics not coming on the market and even disappearing from the market. So we need to find a new model where the consumers, we, the state and the producers can work together to find a way to have access to antibiotics even in this new situation. As a summary of what we're doing, we're trying to use this really to show that there's so many aspects that we need to work together on. And we have the strategy from our government that really helped us to work together in this very complex environment. Finally, of course, even if we work locally, we also need to work internationally. We need to share our experience. We need to learn more from other countries because there's always a lot of learning to do. And we work together with WHO, of course, a lot in different ways. We work, of course, also in the European Union context, in the local context in a lot of different times. We have bilateral collaborations with a number of countries to be able both to learn ourselves how we can become better, but also to be able to share our experiences. And we do this since Swedish is a small language, and we try to publish things also in English. And
It's not working.
and there is quite a lot of reading materials on the net to share with you if you want to know more about our experiences. So thank you very much.
Thank you. So Sweden is often mentioned as a success story, success country on this matter. Even though you would like to, you brought forward some challenges we also have. But what would you say? Could you identify the main factors to that success? Is that we're a small country, or what would you say are the?
As I said, to a certain extent, I think it's luck, because there has to be the right people in the right place, so you can start in the right way.
That's not reassuring, though.
No, but then if you know that, and then you can. I mean, luck also comes to people who are competent and are good and work. So luck is not really just something that happens by hazard or by chance. It comes to the ones that really works together. But I also think that we have a long history of collaboration across sectors. And that helped us a lot. And working on the grassroots level. We often wonder about this self-reliance of our local government, which makes at the state level quite frustrated and worried at times. But I think in this area, especially when you started up, it was a great asset to have that tradition of local governance that could do a lot.
Could this strategic model just be implemented in any other country in Europe, or is it?
Unfortunately, it's never that easy.
No.
But you can learn from the theories, the strategies around it, and then of course you always have to adapt it to your local situation, and they're all going to be different, and I think we have to be very humble about that. They're all going to be different, we're all going to have to find our own local solutions. But we can help each other do that in many different ways.
Thank you very much, Anna-Stina. We'll hear more from you later on. I'll go on to our next speaker. Her division at WHO aims to lead efforts to support countries to rapidly protect, prepare, and respond to health emergencies within the WHO European region. Please welcome the Director of Health Emergencies and Communicable Diseases, Nedret Emiroglu. Welcome.
Thank you very much, and good morning. Commissioner, it will be difficult after your inspiring speech to follow up, and also the examples we have been hearing from Finland and Sweden.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I've been told to use the microphone, or if you want to use that microphone, so everyone can hear.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Sorry, go ahead.
So I will try to give you an update from the WHO front, and I'd like to start mentioning that WHO in general, but also European region in particular, has a very close collaboration with the Commission as well as its institutions, particularly with the European CDC, to combat AMR as a global threat. We have been joining the ECDC's initiative on the European Antibiotic Awareness Day in 2012. And the European region is, of course, larger than the EU member states, 53 member states, so bringing the Central and Eastern Europe and Central Asia and Caucasus countries where we have the major burden. And I'm happy to announce that this was also taken as a good example at the global level. So we have a global Antibiotic Awareness Week, which is also this week. WHO has a strategic document which is covering the period until 2023. It's called the General Program of Work. And AMR is one of the priorities, actually, the cross-cutting priority within this strategic vision, which has been endorsed by all the countries. And maybe two principles is multi-sectorial action and within AMR. One health is critically important, and the other priority is putting the countries at the center and acting to be able to deliver for impact and change. I'm not going to get into the numbers we have heard repeatedly, but I don't think we are stressing enough what the burden on human health is. It's incredible that people are dying, and I don't think it is well known among even the healthcare professionals and the public. But more also important, I'm missing a slide. There was supposed to be another slide, I don't know what happened, but I just want to refer to the OECD study, which was last year looking into 33 member states, also putting 33 countries, also indicating the huge economic burden, like cost of inaction being 2.4 million people dying by 2050, and 3 out of 4 deaths due to AMR could be averted just spending $2 per person. And we could be investing into simple interventions, which was also mentioned, like hygiene and hand hygiene or infection prevention control in healthcare settings or vaccinations. And we are in the European region trying to use the same methodology to have the also economic cost and burden together to be able to influence the decision makers, particularly the politicians, to be able to take the decisions. And I want to stress, like also this year's theme is One Health, which is the only viable solution, working together to be able to reach our target. And WHO is in what is called a tripartite plus agreement, and we will hear more from the Secretary. But we are committed to work together with the other agencies and FAO, OIE, but also the new partner as more recognition on the role of environment, the UN Environment Agency. So what we do in the European region and in WHO is trying to set a similar system of multi-sectorial action to take effective One Health approach at the country level. So we are trying to explain to the decision makers that this is not only a problem of health sector, they need to work together. And then we are promoting countries to develop multi-sectorial action plans, which is really focusing on concrete actions, and also collecting data in order to provide the evidence for action, but at the same time to be able to show the trends, and also we're trying to define what are the evidence-based policies in other sectors to be able to have coordinated action. And I was saying, like, Sweden is a model of all these actions that requires very high level commitment, but at the same time action at the local level, at the community level. So the commitment at the national level is not going to be enough. And I'm grateful for the, particularly the Nordic countries, for their high level commitment, as well as setting the example. I mean, Sweden is one, Denmark, Netherlands, Germany, UK, Finland, and all these countries are pushing also the global agenda and bringing the AMR into even to the UN global high-level meeting. So There is also a global monitoring mechanism that is now the third year, and the second one is going to be sent out to the countries for information this month. So now there is a trend of looking into how the progress is within the countries. This is on limitations. It's a self-assessment, but still you could kind of get an idea. And we are proud that the response rate is the highest from the WHO European region. 50 countries out of 53 replied. There is a good progress, and if you look at from a global level, that's like the half full glass, but also many areas are still missing, particularly in surveillance, but moreover in the multi-sectorial actions, with implying the One Health approach on the animal, plant, and environmental surveillance. So if you look at the European countries, the greener the map gets, the better the countries are. This is showing the countries with a full action plan on AMR, which shows actually the commitment. The dark and the light greens are the countries having the national action plans, depending on how strong they are at the national and local level. And then the next tier is the ones with the orange, which has, again, a plan, but not all elements are complete. And the yellow, again, has a lot more missing elements. There is one country in the region who doesn't have an action plan, but all the other countries, more or less, in the process, either having a full action plan to implement or in the process of being continued. But if you look at the multi-sectorial part, you will see that the map gets a lot to the red or orange side, and we have a lot less green countries, maybe except some of the EU member states, that is the main element missing from the region. And that's what WHO is trying to focus, particularly in Eastern Europe and Central Asia, for the countries that require the biggest support from WHO. And we call it as Central Asia and Eastern Europe surveillance and support mechanism. These are the 20 countries that we prioritize. And the first step in these countries was establishing a surveillance system to start with the data. Again, taking the good examples of EU surveillance systems. And now 12 countries are providing information, which is a good way to continue. Also, we are looking into quality assurance systems, like 257 laboratories have been assessed in these 18 countries, so we make sure that there is a system in place. And in addition, we are looking into each component of the actions, from AMR stewardship, multi-sectorial actions, local actions, prudent use of antibiotics, availability out of the counter, and having specific projects, including some financing, to the countries with the most need to be able to move and push them towards combating AMR. And also we use of course, it's the whole year that we try to advocate, but particularly the awareness week gives an opportunity to us to be able to get our messages. And we also try to align them together with the ECDC so that we give the same messages in an evolving way and using innovation. And like this is last year's exhibition at the UN building in Copenhagen, and we had the honor to welcome Anne Israel and on this unique exhibition, which I'm not going to talk much, but which you will present later, But that's one of the examples of innovation on creating and increasing the awareness towards antibiotic and antimicrobial resistance. What else we do is we provide specific messages for different target groups, and then we also provide them in the local language in the countries. And also test and adapt the messages according to the needs of that country or the context. These are like some of the examples which countries use throughout the year at the local level and the community as well. And then also providing some interesting and culturally sensitive and addressing the language and also interest of the young, particularly generation. This is again another example of using football metaphors to communicate and try to show the burden of and the role of everyone in combating AMR. And this is also, we see that being quite effectively used. So we are together. We believe one agency, organization, or one country efforts is not going to be enough to combat AMR. So we are looking for strong partnerships and commitments at all levels. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nedret and Muruglu. You showed us a very insightful map earlier in your slide presentation. How can governments across the European region be convinced, because we could see that there's work to be done, how can they be convinced that they need to invest more in tackling antibiotic resistance?
First of all, I think there has been a lot of work to be able to provide AMR at the highest political level. But the issue is in the countries to invest. And as mentioned from the Swedish example, it's not that easy because it requires multi-sectorial action. So what we try to do is, first of all, show them the burden, particularly the burden in terms of lives if no action is taken, but also the financial implications. And I think the financial implications and the cost of no action is quite efficient, because the issue is health is mostly believing and committed, but the problem is getting the commitment from a higher level, also from the other sectors to invest. So that's one way of helping them. The other way is of course, mobilizing the communities, people, healthcare professionals, again with the whole of society approach, working with the civil society to be able to have the push from bottom up. But this is an evolving process, and I see definitely in some progress within the region. But then is it enough? I don't think so. We have to really accelerate.
Thank you so much. Our next speaker is an AMR expert with a strong public health and regulatory background, working with global antibiotic resistance response, building bridges between veterinary field and healthcare, science and politics, political realities and idealism, law and life. Please welcome Saya Kalenius, representing World Organization for Animal Health.
Thank you. I'm pleased to be here today representing my organization. And I think it's wise to start with a few words on what is the OIE. If I can use the, thank you. The OIE is an intergovernmental organization. It's outside the UN system. We have 182 member countries, headquarters in Paris, and at the moment 13 regional and sub-regional representations when we opened the newest one in Abu Dhabi just a few days ago.
Can you hold the mic closer?
Sorry.
Thank you.
This is close enough.
Yes.
Okay. So our mandate is to improve animal health and welfare and veterinary public health. And our strategy on antimicrobial resistance builds on that, because the groundwork, whatever we do to build and develop the national veterinary services, to educate the people working on animal health, to improve, to modernize the veterinary legislation in the countries, it also builds the foundation for addressing AMR. And on that foundation, we build our AMR-specific work. And the big blocks of that are our AMR-related international standards and guidelines, our antimicrobial use database, and our awareness and communication material. So, first, the standards and guidelines. Our standards are in the domain of international law. They are recognized by the World Trade Organization, which basically means that if you export and you apply these standards, then you should be okay. If the importer is demanding something else, it raises a question of maybe them trying to raise a trade barrier. So this is all rather serious. They are divided in two codes, aquatic and terrestrial, because these are, although all of them are animals, there are significant differences. And then we go deeper. Our AMR-related guidelines can be found in the OIE list of antimicrobial agents of veterinary importance. And it's a bit, the name is a bit misleading because there is a list of the antimicrobial agents used in veterinary medicines, and they've been graded by their perceived importance to veterinary medicine. But here we also have the guidelines for using them. And I'm just going to pull out a couple of those because I think it's of interest to this audience. And growth promotion was mentioned earlier. So 2018, the member countries unanimously decided to add a clarification on the responsible and prudent use of antimicrobials in veterinary medicine, and clearly stated that this does not include the use of antimicrobials in growth promotion in the absence of a risk analysis. And there were also restrictions put in place concerning the use of certain antimicrobials in the veterinary medicine. They're not all here, but I, again, picked out the growth promotion part. So this is just to show you that there is already a remarkable consensus on the need to phase out the growth promotion. Countries are in very different stages, but this is a discussion on implementation, which is a very different discussion from whether you should or whether you shouldn't. Then let's go to the OIE AMU database, and before anybody asks, this is mostly sales and import data. Very few countries in the world have access to actual user level data. But we have quite a few countries participating at the moment. We have gone under over 150 countries, and even more importantly, the number of countries that are able to provide quantitative data is going up. So the countries are in a learning process. The OIE is in a learning process. We do not publish country-level data. This data belongs to the countries. We encourage them to do it when they are ready, but of course they need to be confident with their numbers before going public. So our reports are on global and regional level, but still very interesting read. And the next one is coming out at the end of this year. And in future, we plan to move this database into a more user-friendly form so that feeding in the data would be easier, and also that the countries could directly work with their data, which would help them in planning their activities. And refine the information to bring in also the information from other sources that we have. And then we are continuously working on developing the all-important animal biomass denominator, which we need in order to be able to compare different countries with different animal populations. It's not quite simple, but we're working on it. And we also have a separate project that has started. We are looking into the substandard and falsified medicines, because in some areas in the world that is a huge problem. We have different estimations, but for some antimicrobials in some countries, it has been estimated that as much as 90% of them might be from black markets or otherwise substandard or falsified, which is also a problem for the AMR work. And then to the promised tripartite activities. No organization is an island. And we have many partner organizations we work with, but little by little, the tripartite, the World Health Organization, the UN Food and Agriculture Organization, and OIE have become a closer team on the domain of AMR. And we have our common global action plan, which most of you know as the WHO action plan, but it's actually been developed together, and it has been adopted by all three organizations, so it binds all of us. You just heard about the self-assessment survey that has been done for a few years now to see where we are going with the global action plan. But just this summer, we adopted a monitoring and evaluation framework for the global action plan so that we can get better information on where we are with this. We have also collected together an array of One Health projects that we want to proceed with in the tripartite work plan on AMR. And to finance this, we have set up, also during the summer, a multi-partner trust fund, for which we welcome donations. Already 2 countries, Netherlands and Sweden, thank you, have come to support us. For this growing need, we need new funding mechanisms, so hopefully this will help with that. And the last step, in September, we formally set up the Tripartite Joint Secretariat, and in which I work. There is a great need for global coordination, and the Tripartite Joint Secretariat is a body that is seeking gaps, opportunities in the tripartite work, and also reaching out to other organizations, because not everything is about us. Actually, nothing is about us. We need everybody in. There is much unused potential in other international organizations, in global and national level, in the private sector, in the civil society, to fight the antimicrobial resistance, and we want to bring all of these actors together. In the global governance structures proposed by the ISEG group that Jana mentioned earlier, we hope to have significant progress during the coming winter. And this tripartite joint secretariat is also going to support those. So what is being suggested is a global high-level leadership group to advocate and to advise on AMR, and a scientific panel to pull together the scientific evidence for a basis of recommendations on global action. So there's quite a lot happening at the moment, and we just hope that the momentum will keep going and we can keep this on the political agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Oh, the chicken here is part of the OIE awareness toolkit, which can be found in our webpage. So please take a look.
Thank you. Thank you. So now we'll open for Q&A. I hope you have loads of questions and take the opportunity to have our panelists answer them. And you will take them while you raise your hands, and I'll ask the press to hold your questions until the press briefing afterwards. But we'll start off with the audience. Are there any? Yes, thank you. I'll give you the microphone. Or is it some? Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
And your name and where you represent.
Renson Loppenburg, representing the Federation of Veterinarians of Europe. First to Dr. Antibiotic, the name of the author you were looking for about the microbe hunters is Paul de Kruijf. Very inspiring book for a lot of us, I suppose. About my sector, the veterinary sector. Over the last few years, we made huge efforts to decrease antimicrobial use and to establish responsible use principles, and with effect. As the most recent ESFAC report shows, veterinary antibiotic consumption from 2011 to 2017 in 30 countries decreased with about, on average, 32%. In some countries it was even more than 50%. And this with a strong emphasis on the prevention of disease, of course, vaccination, biosecurity and more. And this didn't happen high level, but as the Euro Commissioner yourself called it, on the floor. And that's important for us. Now our question. The EU has the One Health AMR network, but it includes no stakeholders. Can the EU please launch a formal multi-stakeholder EU AMR One Health to act as a platform for discussing and continuing actions to tackle AMR between member states, which are in already now, and stakeholders and civil society representatives? Thank you.
My personal answer will be welcome. Because I think, yes, because now it's time to discuss. We have One Health network, which includes only member states' representatives, only. Of course, one from veterinary field, another from human field, and sometimes we asked also to invite environmentalists. We need to. But from my point of view, it's time now to discuss how can we extend such network, because I see now, from my view, silo mentality in this network. Sorry to say, but we need to do more. My proposal was from the beginning also to invite different platforms and to connect with One Health network, because we have in one hand animal welfare platform, as you just mentioned. It's very important to understand interlink between animal welfare standards and use of antibiotics. And in another, my proposal was, look, you have One Health network. Are you capable to communicate, organize common network? It will be good to have a lot of stakeholders around. And in another part, you see food waste and losses platform. But we proposed food which should be, if it is not good for people, to feed animals. It once again means that we need to interconnect. We have 3 different platforms, and now one time they decided to connect each other and to discuss much more. From my point of view, we need to extend our One Health network, no doubt, because survey shows that we need to change it. Why? Because at member states governance level, you see very low level of presentation. They're sending some, officials. Those officials, they're doing their own homework. And then you ask, hey, do you know something about One Health Network? Please tell me. It's a good example. I will be more than happy to see how can we really develop issues and have network of networks. At EU level is mantra. Please do network of networks. Please networking. Otherwise, don't think about possibilities to keep closer Europe to citizens. If we have network, you have no access, people can think that they are staying alone. It's the same about possibilities to join our forces. I am more than happy to continue this, because my proposal also, my DG, so let's see how are we capable to but of course we have lack of human resources at DG level, for sure. If I will be king of Europe, I will be more than happy to extend capacities of ECDC. Yes, ECDC should be much more stronger. I have about 300 more people, that's all.
And EFSA.
And now, of course, because people, European Union is something very big. But when you have about 20,000 people who are working within the Commission as servants for 500 million inhabitants, ridiculous it is. And it means the same. We need to have more people, more networks, more capacities, and more joint forces. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I believe we have another question.
Yes, let's hello? Yeah, sorry. Let's hope for a new pan-European royalty family soon then. My name is Adam Mestrup. I'm representing the veterinary pharmaceutical industry in the Nordics. This is a comment and a question to Anders. You spoke of a new model to make sure that antibiotics and also new antibiotics can enter the market because the markets are very small. This is even more true for the vet side of things. Do you expect, or will you also address this issue? I mean, the new NVR does recognize that this is a problem, that you need to have 6 different packs for one treatment. But will you also look at this?
That's a very interesting question. I mean, we are really very much in a pilot phase to try to find a model where we can de-link usage from the money that we pay. Because it's important to have access to antibiotics and not pay for them for each single tablet we use. And it's important to find a model for that. If we can get this to work, I'm sure similar thoughts can be taken over into the veterinary side. But of course, the structures are different, the whole logistics models are different. But I think the basic concept of trying to find a model where we can de-link usage from the pay that the pharmaceutical industry gets, I think that's a very important common concept that we have in both areas.
Can I just ask you, Anders, because this is quite pressing. How long can that take to implement that model within the veterinary field? Do you have a time frame or the future? Because it's pressing. We need to find solutions quickly.
No, I completely agree. But this is, we are talking about an area now that's very complicated, the antibiotic resistance area. And I think we're sometimes getting stuck on the easy things, just use less antibiotics and so on. But there are many complicated things in this that we need to solve. And just solving this in the human area is quite a big challenge because there's a number of legislative things in it. There is more negotiations with industry so that everybody feels happy about the model that we can all live with and so on. So we are now in our 3rd stage of the development of this and hope that during the next year we can see if the model we now have are going to try if that works. If it works, if it's not falling on hurdles for procurement laws and things like that, then we can start discussing how it can be used in other areas.
Thank you very much. I believe we have another question, please.
Thank you very much. I'm Anders Johansson, and I'm representing the Infection Control Committee of the big European society, ESCMID. And I want to talk about education. Several speakers mentioned that education and engagement will be extremely important. And I have a question and proposal, rather. I think that driving education through the professionals is very successful. And I'm talking about education of the public and education of the actual professionals. And to sort of get that through all Europe, we believe that using the professional organizations to organize education is a good way. That has been good in Nordic countries. That's part of the success, actually, in Nordic countries. That is sort of a bottom-up process to educate the public and educate the colleagues. And I think in the European perspective, that needs support. If that should happen in the European perspective, that needs support. We have started in infection control. We will finish the first 2-year round of education in infection control European certificate. That will, the examinations will be in Paris in this spring. But I'm proposing to have similar educational activities to engage several nationalities in the same education activity. What do you think about that? Would that be a way to sort of spread the knowledge across Europe? To use the professional organizations as the foundation for this kind of activities? What do you say?
Commissioner, I'd like you to answer.
Well, frankly speaking, I am like-minded. I just absolutely agree with you, absolutely. Yes. First of all, but you know, from Commission's side, you know, we have DG that responsible on education, Tibor Navracic, and in my portfolio I have only a very small part of you know, possibilities. Health professionals, a very complicated also area. A lot of health professionals, they have their own capabilities to develop standards, protocols, and so on, to educate, to train. But you are right. Maybe we can discuss how can we really develop some new strategy which should include education as very multi-sectorial issue, and then to try to understand how European Commission can help manage such multi-sectorial situation, because a lot of actors, you know. And of course, I see regional cooperation. Nordic Council is a good example. Nordic countries have a long tradition to develop 5 countries, 5+3. We have all the 3 autonomous regions, Greenland, Faroes, and Åland Islands. You know, but they have excellent 40 years experience to develop common education spaces, and a lot of factors are covered. My answer is yes, we need to take you know, examples from other countries and to see how can Commission facilitate it. But we need also activities from professional organization, proposals, messages, you know, sending messages to Commission to discuss, and then to see what can we do together. I will be more than happy to, of course, ask my colleagues Tibor Navracic, Mariana Thyssen, because they are responsible on professions and so on, and Carmen Novella, Phil Hogan, and me, and to discuss those issues. I am open. Your view, your fundamental, your approach is very welcome.
But money is needed.
Of course money is needed. When you are raising questions about money, it's good time today to know. Yes. Because I am in Sweden. Can I tell you?
Yes.
Please send message to Swedish Parliament and the Swedish society. We need money. Why? Why? Because European Commission proposed to have 1.1% 1.2 GDP in the next multi-annual financial framework. And now we propose, because we know UK is out. One UK means 19 European Union countries are going out. Please keep in mind, Brexit from financial point of view means 19 EU countries are going out. Please send this message to everyone. And when we ask member states government, are you ready to raise level of money into European Union budget? Well, our proposal was 1 point, from the beginning 1.3. European Parliament also in the same line. And now 6 countries told, no, 1.0. And you ask me money. Please ask your member states government, because now it's in the hands of member states councils. New multi-annual financial framework. I am fully in line with you. I see that a lot of poor countries in the EU, which needs to have money now, it's more richest countries told, no, it's enough. 1.0, if 1.0 minus UK. What do you think about new multi-annual financial framework? Thou tell me tales for children. Because it will be then only stories without ground. Of course, money.
Thank you, Commissioner. And also, know that you would like to address this question as well.
Not the funding,
not
money
the
aspect.
not the funding, the education.
Technical collaboration, and we welcome the networks with the associations, with the public health institutes, civil society, and so on, and we work together with ESCMO. I think the critical point here is finding the resources at the national level. And once we have an agreement on the network at the regional level, and when we get that platform to the national level, I think the chances are higher, and we are welcoming your approach.
Thank you very much. Yes, Jana, please.
Yes, I wanted to come also on the issue on training, and I would go back to what the Commissioner said in the very beginning, was the network of networking. Because I think that for the training as well, you definitely need networking. And just to my surprise, in a way, when looking at the WHO and the tripartite figures, there are quite many countries that are on a very high level with the self-evaluation, where I have a question mark about really, with the One Health approach on environment, where we lack information completely. So I think that for the training, we have to take on board all the aspects from the One Health, including, for instance, the environment. And there, the marriage to research is crucial. But I don't know which country really can be, the master to show the training that covers everything in a nice way, what you are referring to. Not only to the professionals, but then, onwards on the chain.
Thank you. I'd just like to remind you that you can always go on our Facebook and place your questions there, or use your Twitter account, and please use the hashtag EAAD. And we'll try to answer all questions. But we have another question, please.
Hello, my name is Mohammed Cook. I'm from the European Pharmaceutical Student Association. Firstly, I would like to thank ECDC for the invitation, because we are engaging and working together. In general, I'm from Poland, so it was a bit harsh for me to see the statistics, and a bit sad to see the mistakes of the country in terms of AMR. And then we were also talking about interprofessional education and One Health approach and the partnership of different professional associations and the impact that it can do in terms of education. So my question would be, what would be your advice in terms of also having in mind that we have experience, and now it's the time of the change of the mandates. So what would be your recommendation for youth organizations to accelerate their message in terms of IMR? Because we are here with veterinary students, with med students, with pharmacy students, and we are all together working in terms of AMR. But what would be your recommendation to kind of accelerate the message from our side, and also maybe engage a bit more with Commission in terms of activity from our side, but also from the Commission.
Thank you very much indeed. I count on youth organization. Oh, you know, we have European Youth Health Parliament. Very important initiative. Of course, also we have European Youth Pediatric University, so-called. And it will be very good to invite European youth veterinarians, European youth environmentalists. And you know, idea is, the next commission will do something, because I know that now one commissioner will be responsible on foresight issues. Foresight. It will be good to organize conference about future of Europe. And when I was member of European Convention in 2002 and 2004, we also invited European Youth Organization to have their own youth convention. And they presented a lot of ideas to us, and it was included into treaty establishing constitution for Europe. And now, of course, if you look at Lisbon Treaty, you can see also some ideas which were presented by European Youth Convention. Please organize initiatives to have some summit, conference, where European youth organization can also have part and propose and to see how can we improve mechanisms at EU level, including youth organizations, to be much more active. As you know, now from our side, we just proposed to extend Erasmus+. It's very good. It also can include education, awareness, training, and so on and so on. But also we propose to have European Youth Solidarity Corps, which also is, open space for youth initiatives from different angles. And also we have, idea to develop in social pyramid more issues related to youth professional education. And let's join our forces. Please be active. I will be more than happy to facilitate, if I may, but I think we need to think how can we include your initiatives. And you please look, Greta Thunberg, she did alone, Please be active and please change the world. I will be more than happy to see youth revolution.
Thank you, Commissioner. Just some comments on that from you, Madrid.
Just suggestions to be brief on timing. We value youth a lot, and there are different platforms you can approach WHO. We have a ministerial, environment ministerial health conference series where we engage youth organizations actively during the preparation phase, but at the conference as well. You can be represented within the WHO governing bodies and as recognized civil society. That's another option. And we are happy also to work directly. So please approach me so we could find a few options to engage you more if you're interested.
Thank you very much. I'm afraid that was our last question, but please don't forget to state your questions online and we'll try to answer them all. Sorry? Okay, thank you. So thank you to our eminent, don't leave yet, Auntie, thank you for your insights. And time is too short. I was going to say when you're having fun, even it's a very important issue, and time is too short. And thank you so much for those insights. You gave us all a lot to think about. Thank you very much. I was going to share with you another personal story, but we're pressed for time, so I'm just going to shorten it, even though it's a very personal one. In May 2019, my mother was diagnosed with terminal cancer and facing the fact that there's no other treatment than palliative care. She was given treatments, but they were also made her vulnerable to bacterial infections. So in the past 6 months, she's been given 5 antibiotic treatments. And we've mentioned it before. I'm lucky that she received those treatments here in Sweden, even though we know that her time is very limited. Perhaps her time has been extended since they worked. And if they hadn't worked, I would have her for a shorter time, and my children as well. So speaking on this and the importance of antibiotic resistance when it comes in terms of cancer treatments, I'd like to welcome Annelise Riel from the Norwegian Cancer Society. You've developed an exhibition that you can see out in the hallway called Hanging by a Thread, and it's a very important exhibition. My pleasure, please.
You want me to use them?
No, yes.
Can I use this one?
Yes, no, you can use that one, but you have to.
I could just put it back. Yes, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, friends and friends to become in the future. Hanging by a thread. This is an expression I think most of you might know. We are associated with something that might go wrong, something that might be broken. This is the name we chose for the exhibition, an exhibition about antibiotics. A few generations ago, my grandfather's generation, people died of infections, small infections, big infections. Then we discovered the wonder drug, antibiotics. Today, we take it for granted that it works, always. I have a cold, a flu, a sore throat, I want antibiotics. I have an infection in my knee. I do not have time to be away from my work, for many days. I go to my GP and I ask for antibiotics. I am under treatment for cancer and my immune system is very, very low. Infections are common. Antibiotics will be crucial for me. This is our everyday life and has been for ever so long now. But we can't take it for granted any longer. Times are changing. The bacteria that cause infections are fighting back. They have got resistant to the antibiotics. That is their nature. I say it also because, you know, a lot of people think that it's not the bacteria, but that it's the person itself that is resistant. We lack knowledge. You know, and you have known for ever so long, that we need to, one, save, keep the antibiotics for emergencies, for instance, cancers, and we need to use them the right way. We must stop the spreading of disease. We must all take the vaccines. And actually, also, we need to wash our hands. We need to find new drugs, antibiotics or other drugs, with the same kind of effect. Research, research, research. And also to make the industry do more research. The WHO is talking about a tsunami. Getting professionals, bureaucrats, technicians, and politicians on board, doing a lot. You are amongst them. But not really getting the understanding of the problem among people in general. The messages are, to be honest, often received as too complex and too academic. Getting people's understanding and awareness is crucial, so the unnecessary demand for antibiotics will stop. Also because everybody can do something, and to have really the voices of the people, they also can influence the politicians and others in getting faster forward. the Norwegian Cancer Society, we started wondering why there was no uproar among people, among NGOs in the health sector. And we also then realized that cancer patients really would be affected. For some cancers, treatment without antibiotics is not possible. Other patients needed under-treatment. Serious infections are common. In future, people will not die during an advanced treatment, but actually by an infection. We know that the survival rate of cancer, it will not increase, it might decrease now. We also know that you don't then perhaps die of cancer with an infection, but still we don't have the data because we are not registering that it's an infection you die of. We need to do that in the future. Anyway, what we thought was the cancer story can be a wake-up message, because we all are affected by cancers. We all know someone with cancers. So telling the story about antibiotics using cancer from an organization like ours, from the civil society, from the NGOs, from the people's side, giving it a face, we thought it might help. So this week is Awareness Week. This exhibition is out in the hall. We think is a tool to get attention, awareness raising on what each of us can do and must do. It makes me proud and it gives me energy to know that you wanted the exhibition here in Stockholm. It's also in Oslo. It's been in Copenhagen, WHO. It's actually right now also hanging in Brussels. I'll open it in 2 days' time in the Parliament. And it will go to New York and it will go to Moscow. And hopefully many other places if it helps. We need it. So I'll end by a reflection. This exhibition is called Hanging by a Thread. We do have in Norway another saying that's also about threads. It goes like this. In Norwegian it says "håp i et hengende snøre." If you translate it, it would be something like hope in a hanging lace. Hope in a hanging lace. Which means there's always hope. I like that approach. I go for that one. Together, hopefully, with all of you. So, hereby, I declare the exhibition officially open. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ellen and Ria, for leaving us with those wonderful words of hope that we all need to remember also. And on that note, it's time to wrap up this first part of today's events. We'll be serving a light luncheon outside, and for the press, please stay on for your press briefing. But for the rest of you, please move forward quickly so that you get your lunch. Thank you again. Thank you very much.